Here we are, after 53 projects, we finally made it to the finale of the Infinity Saga, boys! Welcome to the spoiler talk for Avengers Endgame, and also, I don't really know if anyone cares, probably not, but I am recording this actually before the review. Just thought I would let you know. I don't know why, but it just came up in my mind, and that's how I kind of work with these things, but we're finally here. Now, my guess is this is gonna be my longest spoiler talk for a movie ever, because this thing is 3 hours long, okay? It's not actually 3 hours long. It's about like 15 minutes of credits, so it's more like 2 hours and 50 minutes in that sense, because actually it's kind of like 3 hours and 5 minutes, but let's not get into the specifics, okay? We have basically a 3-hour behemoth right here that we have to deal with, because here we are. Now that half the universe has been snapped away, we gotta fix this bad boy, and we can't do anything simply, can we? You know, just pick up the stones, get everyone back, and there you go. We're done. Chop off Thanos' head for good measure, call it a day. Yeah, if only it were that easy. That would have been a lot of fun. Anyway, let's get into the spoiler talk then, shall we? Because I actually think that this is gonna be a very long one, but that doesn't mean I need to go on for about the same time as this movie. So, this movie starts off with Clint Barton, which actually kind of surprised me when I was in the theater. And he's playing with his daughter, teaching her how to shoot arrows. And meanwhile, the family is having a picnic as well in the garden, I guess you could say, or in the yard. I don't really know what you want to call that. Anyway, but as the mom is calling for food, the daughter vanishes. And Clint is like, Lila, where you at? But she's gone. And then poof, the rest of them are gone as well. And the only thing you really see is the dust that remain. And it's just like everyone is gone. So then we cut to Tony and Nebula stuck in space because they were the only ones who were able to survive on Titan. And also, apparently they were able to get Quill's ship to work, so they got off into space. However, if I can nitpick right now, why are they stopped? It's space. You don't stop in space. Like, they're perfectly still. They should be floating at the very least. But they're like still. No, look, I know it's a nitpick, but I don't care. They should be floating forward, but they're just still. Just a little thing. Anyway, Tony then records a message for Pepper because of the fact that, you know, in case he doesn't make it, then I'm like, okay, but if you don't make it, who's gonna find your helmet? Maybe he's gonna upload it to the server, but like, does he still have connection? You know, I mean, when he was leaving Earth, Friday kind of dropped off in Infinity War, so I don't even know if he really has a connection, you know? So who's gonna find this helmet? But he makes a message, and afterwards he falls asleep. Nebula puts him in a seat in order to let him sleep it off. However, as he's sleeping, someone turned on the light, so someone needs to turn off that sun. Turns out it's Carol Danvers, and when I talked about in my review that there's really only one thing Carol does that actually is useful in the movie, I would say this is it, because her later appearance for me, I don't know, it didn't really feel useful, like it needed to happen. I feel like Tony and Pepper probably could have taken care of it, but that one is debatable. Anyway, but yeah, she takes Tony back home. Tony gets out and he's like, oh, is she alive? He looks absolutely horrible, by the way, but is she alive? And then Pepper's there and Tony is all happy. However, we lost, and Tony is mad because, like you said, when we would lose, we would do that together too. Where were you? So he's not happy about that, and then he falls down, so he needs to be put in a bed. Also, we don't have a location on Thanos at all until after Tony has his freak out, at which point then Nebula is like, I know where he is. He always went to the garden. And then apparently 2 days ago, Rocket actually got some information about where Thanos is. He's been keeping that a secret, it seems. Anyway, apparently Thanos used the stones again, because apparently there was a big power surge on Earth when Thanos used the stones a month ago, or like 20 days ago or something like that. And apparently it happened 2 days ago on another planet. So the team is ready to head over there. So they get over there. Carol kind of puts him in a chokehold in a way. We have also Banner and War Machine kind of holding him down as well. Thor just chops off his arm with the gauntlet in it. However, there are no stones in it. So what happened to the stones? Well, Thanos wanted to make sure that you could not reverse what has been done. So he used the stones 2 days ago to destroy the stones, and it also almost killed him in doing it. So then Nebula is like, look, my father is many things, okay? All of them bad, but a liar is not one of them. And then he's like, maybe I treated you too harshly, daughter. And then Thor just chops off his head, and he's just like, I went for his head. But there you go. We got nothing. So then we get the big text. The text that the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. people kind of missed, and that is 5 years later, boys. We have a time skip to October of 2023. That's at least when this is taking place. So everyone seems to be readjusting to the new world. Apparently, one of the Russo brothers is gay and also went on a date. Good for him, but it's still kind of weird. Also, that is gonna be horrible though at the end of this movie, because that guy goes on a date with someone else. Meanwhile, his lover will return at the end of this movie and be like, "Excuse me, you cheated on me." Okay, I was like, what happened? But everyone, like I said, is adjusting. We have the Avengers are kind of still keeping in contact with each other and also keeping in contact with some other people like Carol, for example, and also Rocket. Carol apparently also decided to get the absolute worst haircut on the planet, and I hate it. You don't have to show us that you're a lesbian, okay? This goes a little bit too far, okay? Just be a lesbian with long hair. They exist, okay? They exist. I know it's a rare breed, but you don't have to get the lesbian haircut to be lesbian, okay? Because apparently she's lesbian, but we don't really figure that one out until the next movie where she appears, which is the Marvels, which God give me strength. But before that, we have Thor Love and Thunder, so God give me also strength for that one. Anyway, meanwhile, in like a storage area, Master Splinter frees Scott from the quantum realm, who has apparently been stuck there forever. So yeah, he's back, baby. At the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp, we saw the fact that he got stuck in the quantum realm, but now he's back. And by the way, yes, I will call that Rat Master Splinter because of the fact that it's funny, but also because technically Ninja Turtles and Daredevil have some kind of a connection, and that's actually funny as well. So it works in both ways, since, you know, the Daredevil Netflix show is officially canon to this thing, and you cannot say no, because even on Disney Plus that is in the timeline, so you can't say no about that one. But Scott comes out of quantum realm. He's like, help, to the camera. He gets let go. He doesn't understand what has happened. He sees a bunch of wreckage around him. He doesn't understand it at all. He visits basically the memorial for all of the billions of people that were killed, and he's like, no, not Cassie. So he searches for his daughter's name. Instead, he finds his own name, and he's like, oh, I'm supposed to be dead, but I'm alive. So then afterwards, apparently he left all of his stuff behind, and he rushes over back to his house in order to see maybe Cassie's alive. And then this girl opens the door. You know, went from like 8 to like 13. Yeah, you've grown, Cassie, my girl. Yes, indeed. Cassie is now older because 5 years have passed. So then Scott heads over to Avengers HQ, where Captain America's like, is that a recording? Nah, that's the front door. Okay, open up the front door, and Scott basically gives us the big shocking reveal. I was gone for 5 hours, not 5 years. I was stuck in a quantum realm for 5 hours. Like, it's not 5 years for me, okay? I mean, not even a day has passed. Like, okay, that's some interesting information. But then Scott is like, why don't we just time travel? And it's like, well, you know, there's a myriad of reasons why, and also we don't necessarily understand time travel. By the way, I hate time travel storylines. I do. I don't like them because they keep making the same mistake over and over and over again. I hate it when time travel stories, when something happens in the past, it affects the future, because that technically doesn't make any sense, okay? That doesn't really make sense because, like, for example, if back in the day someone gets killed, why don't the other people then instantly disappear? And also, how were they able to come back into the past to begin with? That kind of stuff. I don't like that, but this one actually tries to do it in a much better way. However, we need some help. So we visit Tony Stark, who has a daughter now who loves him 3000, which he's gonna brag about. And Scott wants to do a time heist, but Tony's like, yeah, no, because I can't lose what I have, okay? I cannot lose my daughter. And also, if we do this and we fail, we'll never be back. So that didn't work out. So the next best thing is Smart Hulk, boys, and I hate this. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. It is, oh my god. There's like no development here for Smart Hulk to exist. Like, apparently in the comic books, this is a thing that happened in the comics, but there was a big storyline that happened in order to make this happen. Yeah, we don't have that here. We don't get that. Like, we needed a Hulk movie in between Infinity War and Endgame instead of Captain Marvel, because that would have made a lot more sense, but also would have given us some spoilers about, you know, Endgame's whole 5-year time skip. But still, but that is what we needed, and we did not get that, and we still haven't gotten yet that. So for me, I don't like it. But like, this is not even the worst thing. I mean, kind of is though. I mean, he does the dab. Come on, dude. Come on. Oh boy. Like, that is the worst thing Hulk has ever done in his life outside of being She-Hulk. But it gets worse. It gets worse. Okay. But anyway, Banner is in, so he's gonna help with the time travel stuff. Meanwhile, later on, Tony is doing the dishes, and he accidentally splashes water everywhere. He sees a picture in the back there. He grabs it. It is a picture of Peter Parker, and that causes him to work on the time travel stuff after all. Apparently, he's already tried it a couple of times when we jump to him later on, and he's gonna try it one more time, and he does it. He invents time travel thanks to the quantum realm, but he does it in like a night, one night, and he's like, shit! And then his daughter repeats it. It's like, you're not supposed to say, hey, only mommy is allowed to say that word. She kind of coined it. And then we get the whole Love You 3000 thing, which is absolutely adorable. So then we get some Hulk time traveling fails featuring Scott Lang as Scott becomes older, younger, babyer, and then gets turned back to normal. And then Tony arrives and he gives Cap his shield back, and also he's like, what you guys did was actually the wrong thing. Instead of having Scott go through time, you had time go through Scott. That was not an idea, but I've fixed the whole thing so we can do it. But we're getting the whole gang, right? Like, we're getting everyone. And I'm like, no, you're getting most, but you're not getting everyone. We're skipping Captain Marvel and Okoye technically, but we're skipping Captain Marvel. But the rest, yeah, you get. So now it's time to call the squad, and Scott maybe eating outside is not such a good idea because the squad arrives. I do like how Rhodey is like, sup, regular sized man. I thought that one was funny. However, we're missing someone, and Hulk and Rocket, they head over to New Asgard on Earth apparently in order to pick up Thor. However, there's a bunch of kegs of beer. They're empty, and also Valkyrie's just like, yeah, he's not coming. So we go inside and we got Fat Thor. Now, I've seen people complain about this, but this I don't really have an issue with, as long as it was for one movie only, which it is. So I don't really have an issue with it. What I have an issue with is the poster, because on the poster we see regular Thor. We don't see Fat Thor. And we also get Korg and Meek again, who are apparently playing Fortnite and are apparently, you know, being insulted by Noob Master 69 or whatever. But eventually we convince Thor to help. Meanwhile, Natasha goes over to Japan apparently, because apparently there have been sightings of Clint. By the way, the earlier stuff, like when they had that meeting earlier in the movie and they talk about a bunch dead, my first thought was Punisher, but basically he has kind of gone full Punisher, so yeah, it can still work. But yeah, Ronan is in Japan in order to kill the criminals because of the fact that they were allowed to live. Meanwhile, good people were killed. So he needs to fix that because they got Thanos. You get Ronan. And so he kills the guy, and then Natasha's like, look, we may have a way to bring everyone back. Please come with me. And he's like, don't give me hope, but he goes along anyway. However, we need a test dummy. And we get the explanation for how time travel is going to work in this movie. So let's get into that one first before we get to the test dummy. Starting off, this is how time travel works. Multiverse theory. That's how it works. Multiverse theory is how time travel works. Basically, if we go back into the past and we change something, a new timeline is formed, while the old timeline that we came from still exists. So basically, you go back in time, you kill Hitler, or baby Thanos, I guess. Thanos still existed in our timeline. That doesn't disappear. It's just from that moment, a new timeline is formed. And I like this explanation for time travel. I really wish a lot of other time traveling movies would have actually gone through with this instead of the stupid stuff that they did. So Clint becomes the test dummy. He goes through and he goes back in time, and he hears his wife call their son, I think, and then he wants to go inside the house in order to hug his daughter, but before he can, he gets brought back. But he did bring the baseball glove, so it worked. So there you go. Now we need to figure out when to grab the stones without really interfering too much with, you know, our past selves, because we don't really want to do that either. So starting off, reality stone. Very easy. Thor the Dark World. Simple. We can cross that one off the list. Afterwards, we have the Soul Stone from Guardians of the Galaxy. We can pick it up right before Quill went in. Perfect time. And while we're there, we can also head over to the Soul Stone of Vormir. No problem at all. However, as they are talking about the remaining 3 stones, they come up with something. If we pick the right year, all 3 stones are in New York. That year being 2012, boys. So we have some teams that we split up in, and everyone goes to the different time throughout history in order to be able to, you know, get the stones. So they all go back in time in order to grab the stones. So we're gonna go with each one separately, in my opinion. Starting off, we have Hulk. Hulk arrives in New York City in 2012 together with Captain America, Tony, and also Ant-Man, and he goes off in order to get the time stone from the Ancient One. The thing is that the Ancient One kind of has some issues with this and also knocks him out of his Hulk form in the spiritual form, and basically talk with Ancient One in order to try and convince her of giving the stone to him. However, it doesn't really work because then she explains, if you take the stone out, that will ruin the timeline timeline of that new timeline that was created because it needed the time stone. So then he's like, what if we bring them all back afterwards? And she's still not convinced until Banner says, hey, Strange gave the stone to Thanos. And then the Ancient One says, maybe I made a mistake, which is like, oh no, now we ruined the timeline. She's not gonna train Strange. But no, she is instead like, maybe I'm actually wrong. Maybe I should give you the stone because that is what Strange saw. And Strange is the wisest of us all or whatever. So she gives the stone to Hulk. So he got the stone. One down, boys. All right, couple more to go. So Thor and Rocket head into Asgard in order to get the reality stone. And they're gonna basically suck it out of Jane, which I kind of wish he would suck something out of me. But still. Anyway, however, Thor has some issues. Thor is some issues because this is right before his mom died. So he's like, I can do this, but he can't do it. He runs off. So Rocket goes in, gets the stone, and then runs away. Meanwhile, while that is happening, Thor meets up with his mom because she's a witch. She instantly deduces that he is from the future and that the future has not been kind to him. And then he has a little bit of a talk with his mom. And then right before they leave, he gets Mjolnir and then they teleport back to the future. But it was a nice talk that he had with his mom. So Nebula and War Machine, they head for the Power Stone. Meanwhile, 2014, Nebula is fighting together with Gamora. They head back to Thanos' place. However, she then has a panic attack when she sees Thanos because her link with her past self. Basically, they're on the same network. So she starts playing a video from Avengers Endgame's earlier part. It's like, oh boy. So Thanos wants to have her examined and he wants to learn everything. And through that, he learns exactly what is going to happen. So then the new plan is we're gonna capture the Nebula that came from the future and have the 2014 Nebula take her place in order to be able to bring Thanos potentially to the future so he can rectify this. Also, War Machine knocks out Quill and Nebula basically uses her hand in order to be able to grab the stone while burning basically the metal hand that she has and gives the Power Stone. However, when she wants to go back, she has a bit of a crash as well. She gets captured and afterwards they make the switch and then the other Nebula go back. By the way, everyone returns at the same time in 2023. They left and they returned at all the same time. So let's see what the main squad is up to. The main squad being Tony, Cap, and of course Ant-Man. So Tony flies around Avengers HQ. He heads inside and then we get to see some of the Avengers from different perspectives and also some, I guess you could say maybe deleted scenes, but not really deleted scenes. But what happened after the Avengers before we got the Swarm? However, Tony flicks Ant-Man towards 2012 Tony in order for later on. So everyone has to go downstairs. However, Hulk cannot fit in the elevator, so he has to take the stairs, which is not happy about. So everyone gets downstairs. Tony's like, hey, Scott, use the give myself a heart attack, basically. Just unplug something. It'll be fixed. Don't worry about it. So he does that. Tony gets the Tesseract and Tony and Ant-Man are ready to leave. However, then Hulk knocks Tony away and Loki grabs the Tesseract and teleports away because, hey, you want a Disney Plus show? Because, we got one for you. Ah, boy. That is, by the way, the next thing we're looking at. Just saying. So they failed. Meanwhile, Captain America, he goes into the elevator in order to get the scepter. He even does the little comic thing, Hail Hydra, which I'm a big fan of that they actually used that in this movie in this way. It was very clever. So he gets the scepter, he walks off. However, because of the whole Loki situation, the 2012 Captain America thinks that this is actually Loki. So we have a bit of a Cap fight. And yes, that is indeed America's ass. But they have a bit of a fight. However, our Captain America is able to overpower the 2012 Captain America by saying Bucky lives so that he can get him off guard, grab the scepter and knock him out and then take the scepter away. But we got the scepter at least. However, we are missing the Tesseract. So we still need to get that bad boy. However, the pim particles that we have only allows for one trip, like back and forth. You can't, like if you go forth again, you can't go back anymore. So then Tony has an idea. We go to 1970 in order to be able to get both, because there's one place where we can go in order to get both. And Cap joins him and they both head to 1970 while Ant-Man goes back to 2023. So they arrive in 1970 and the plan is simple. We need to get the pim particles because Hank Pym works here, and also we need to get the Tesseract. So Tony goes to get the Tesseract. Cap heads off in order to get the pim particles. Stan Lee, R.I.P. the boy, drives by the military base and has like an 80-year-old voice, even though he's supposed to be, I don't know, like 20 or 30. So the voice gives it away. It's the same in Captain Marvel. Yeah, well, technically the attitude as well, because like you see Samuel L. Jackson fight, but it's like a 50-year-old, 60-year-old man fighting when he's not supposed to be that age. But they get inside. However, they were kind of spotted, so we have a little bit of a problem problem. At least Cap has a little bit of a problem because he's able to get the pin particles. However, when he hides, he sees Peggy Carter. So, yeah, and also went into Carter's office. So, yeah, that is a bit sad, but still, he is able to escape the facility without being spotted at all. Meanwhile, Tony goes to grab the Tesseract and meets up with his old man, he is actually older than right now. Anyway, he has a little bit of a chat with his dad. Very nice chat. They talk about it. He even tells his dad that he has a daughter. I guess it's kind of a way of him saying that the dude has a granddaughter, but like he can't say that, but he still kind of wants to, so he kind of goes this route. And they have a nice chat. And then right before Howard leaves, we get to see Jarvis from Agent Carter TV series, baby. All right. This was my hype moment in this movie. I know everybody had the hype moment when the hype moments come, and I had the hype moments when the hype moments came as well. Don't you worry about that one. But like, this was it for me. I was like, it's him. I was so happy about this because this was a Marvel TV character appearing in an MCU movie before Daredevil. This was awesome. And also, to me, fully canonizes the Agent Carter TV series. And in my opinion, also kind of kicks out the Agent Carter one-shot. Which, hey, I would rather do. I would rather kick out the Agent Carter one-shot than the Agent Carter TV series. Because I want to spend more time with Peggy because she is extremely hot and a really cool character. But they got the stuff that they needed, so they go back to the future as well. So it seems as though we have one more stone to get, and I saved the best for last, and so did the movie. Because Hawkeye and Black Widow, they arrive on Vormir. They don't recognize Red Skull, but sure, why not? And it's time for someone to die, and they both want to die because Clint is ashamed. By the way, I do love the purple suit that Clint is wearing. I will say that. Anyway, Clint is ashamed of everything that he has done, and he can't look his family in the eyes anymore. Meanwhile, Natasha doesn't really have family, except for the fact that she does, but that movie hadn't come out yet. It's so dumb because they talk about the fact that Natasha doesn't really have family outside of the Avengers, but like in the Black Widow movie, we see that she actually does have a family, so that's a little bit of a weird one. But anyway, they have a little bit of a tussle in order to see who can kill themselves better. However, Natasha is just a little bit smarter than Clint, and she is able to hook him to a wall, and either she dies or they both go. So she dies, R.I.P. Nat. It's sad, but it's copied from Gamora, so it's a little bit of a weird one. But like, it is sad, I will say that. But Clint gets the stone, and then he transports back. Everyone returns to the present. By the way, also beforehand, in the past, in 2014, Nebula of our time tried to convince the Nebula of 2014 and Gamora, but that didn't necessarily work. But she's captured. The Nebula of 2014 takes the place, so she's the one who returns to 2023 instead of our Nebula. So then everyone has a little bit of a sad moment about the fact that Natasha's dead. R.I.P. the gal. However, by the way, about this, during this time, Nebula could have activated the time machine in order to bring Thanos here, but I guess she didn't because she waits until later on. But anyway, now that we have all the stones, Tony has a gauntlet made out of nanotech in order to be able to hold the power of the stones, which I've seen a lot of people make issues with because the fact is, how is Tony able to make something like that? Well, I mean, they probably took the Infinity Gauntlet back to Earth after Thor chopped it off, so he probably was able to model it after that, you know? But anyway, they have the new Infinity Gauntlet, which you could actually buy. They put the stones in. However, who's gonna wear it? And Thor's like, I'm gonna be the one to wear it. And everyone is like, yeah, how about no? Okay? Look, Thor, you're not the man you used to be. You're technically twice the man you used to be. But not in a good way. More in an expansive way. Okay? Dude, if you fall, there will be a dent in the earth. So maybe it's better not. Okay? Maybe we should pick someone else. And then Hulk is like, I'm gonna do it. Why? Because of the fact that this is basically a lot of gamma radiation. He's already got the gamma radiation flowing through his veins. So, you know, he's the best choice at survival. So he grabs the gauntlet, he takes all the power, and he snaps his fingers. Meanwhile, 2014 Nebula, she uploads the coordinates in order to be able to let Thanos through. So Thanos' huge ship starts expanding and flying into the sky above. Nobody heard that, probably because of the fact that Hulk was busy, but Hulk snaps his fingers, and maybe it worked, maybe it didn't, until Clint gets a call from his wife. Official confirmation that it worked. Half the universe is back in order, baby. Meanwhile, Thanos bombs the HQ, and a little detail that I love is the fact that when the Avengers HQ kind of blows up, you know, you see Ant-Man become small. Like when the missile hits, you see him become small. I like that little detail. But basically, everyone kind of gets a little bit trapped, except for the main three because they have to go off to fight Thanos. But everyone is now separated. So Clint grabs the gauntlet and runs away with the stones from the dog beasts that are chasing him. He kills a bunch of them as well. Thanos is going to wait for the big three, as you could say, for the Trinity of Marvel, as you could say, or the MCU, as you could say. I don't care. Spider-Man hasn't been here long enough in order to be part of the Trinity for MCU, okay? He might be part of the Trinity now in the MCU, but he wasn't before. It was Cap, Iron Man, and Thor. But he's gonna wait for them and task Nebula in order to find the stones and bring them to him. Meanwhile, Gamora heads over to our Nebula and asks about the future. And then when she's like, well, I mean, I killed you. I tried to kill you a couple of times. But afterwards we became friends. We even became sisters. And that causes Gamora to free Nebula and they escape. Meanwhile, the main three are gonna head for Thanos in order to take him down. And Thanos is like, well, I do see the flaws in my plan. My plan was almost perfect, but you guys actually did show me one mistake that I made. I let the people remember. That is the mistake that I made. So instead, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna basically become Cyrus from Pokemon Platinum. I'm gonna kill the whole universe and rebuild it instead. Which is why I called him lesser in this movie than in the last movie with Thanos. Because, like, the last movie, you know, you can kind of see Thanos' side. But at this point, he's like, everyone needs to go. However, obviously, the Trinity is not gonna allow that. So they have a battle against Thanos. Meanwhile, Clint eventually gives the gauntlet to Nebula because he thinks it's our Nebula, but it's not our Nebula. So then Gamora tries to convince the 2014 Nebula to stop. However, she doesn't want to stop and is about to kill Gamora. But then 2023's Nebula kills 2014's Nebula. And now I don't have to say numbers anymore. But she's dead. Alright, fantastic. But we cannot let this fall into the hands of Thanos. So the three have a big fight against Thanos. They are putting up a terrible fight, to be honest. It's 3-on-1. How are you losing? But they're trying their best, however. At one point, Thanos hits the hammer away and almost kills Thor with the with his own axe, which I actually did like that. Thor like calls his axe towards him, but then Thanos grabs it and just tries to kill him with it. However, then Thanos gets hit by the hammer and it's Cap, baby. This was the big moment in the movie that everyone was like, yeah. But yeah, anyway, in one of the two, obviously, there's another one, but that has to do with portals, and I've never really played Portal, so I don't know what the hype was all about. But then we have Cap versus Thanos, and what I love about it is the fact that Cap uses the tactics that he used to do with Thor in order to get the upper hand, because he now has both weapons. So he throws his shield and then hits the hammer against it for the shockwave effect. Love it. However, they're still not able to win, sadly enough. So then Thanos eventually starts chopping at the shield of Captain America, chopping it basically in a way in half, but not perfectly balanced because it's not perfectly in half. But he starts like chopping off bits and pieces of the shield till the bottom half remains. And afterwards, he's like, look, I'm gonna destroy your planet and I'm gonna enjoy it. And then you see Thanos' army come into frame, and then Cap gets a call from Sam, who's alive again, and he's like, on your left, and a portal opens, and who appears from that portal? It is a Bombay, Wakanda forever, baby. It's Black Panther himself with Shuri and Okoye. And afterwards, so many portals open up, everyone comes through who has been in the movies, and then Doctor Strange is like, this is everyone, right? And Wong is like, you wanted more? And I'm like, yep. Yeah, I did. Cloak and Dagger, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the Defenders, the Runaways. You know, we can have more people. Yes, I wanted more. Ghost Rider, even. I wanted more. Yes, I did. I'm sorry to say it, but I did want more, okay? And if they were able to do that, this movie would have been so perfection. But no, they didn't do it. It's still like, I gave it the score that I gave, and I stand by it anyway. But everyone is here now, and now we have the big battle. Also, Ant-Man became Giant Man in order to save Rhodey, Rocket, and Hulk as well. So now everyone is ready for the battle, and we get Avengers Assemble, baby. So then the battle begins. Everyone is fighting. However, Peter takes a moment to go over to Tony Stark in order to tell him what has happened, and Tony just hugs him. Peter Quill sees Gamora. However, it's not his Gamora, sadly enough, so he gets kicked in the nuts. And Hawkeye is just curious about what he is supposed to do with the stones, so we need to send them back in time. However, we can't do that, so just run. However, maybe we can, because we have another time machine here, because the van survived, boys. Yeah, I actually recently saw that clip on Twitter. I actually watched it a couple of times, where it was like, Luis said, you know, I lost everything that I had, but I got the van. you know, from the first Ant-Man movie, and it's like, look at it. It came through in the end. You got the van. But yeah, also Wasp is here as well. Very nice. But basically, Ant-Man and the Wasp need to turn on the van in order for them to throw the stones back in time, in that sense, or at least get them back in time. But now we need to get the gauntlet to the van, so everyone is trying to stop it. Also, Peter goes insta-kill mode, which little problem with that one. I have an issue with Peter going insta-kill mode because on one hand, these creatures are alive, but are they sentient? Because they kind of seem like mindless beasts that just get ordered to do stuff. But also, it's Spider-Man technically killing, so I don't know how I feel about that. It's a gray area. Let's say that. Okay, this is a gray area where I'm not comfortable with it, but I don't fully hate it either because they're not fully sentient beings anyway. You know, so it's I don't know, dude. But also, it was the only way. There was nothing else that he could have done. You know, he would have been torn to shreds. Also, Tony asks Strange, like, hey, is this the one where we win? And Strange, like, if I tell you what happens, it will not happen. And I'm like, is that the question that he asked? Are you deaf or something like that? Because that is not what he asked. He asked, is this the one where we win? That is a yes or no question, okay? So if you say yes, you're not spoiling anything. This exchange makes me upset. But whatever. Also, Wanda heads over to Thanos, and she's like, you took everything from me. And he's just like, I don't even know who you are. So then she bodies Thanos. Like, she basically takes him down. However, she isn't really able to do a lot because of the fact that right before she's about to kill Thanos, he calls in an airstrike from his ship. However, that will also kill some of his men. So that's not really a smart idea. But whatever, he needs to do it in order to survive. So now the big ship upstairs is shooting. And this is kind of the one where I was kind of iffy about, because at this point, Captain Marvel, because the cannons then start pointing up and Captain Marvel appears and destroys the ship. I feel like some of the people that we had here, like Tony and Pepper, could have done it. But whatever, you know what? That one is debatable. However, there is something at the end of this that I want to talk about in relation to Captain Marvel. And I find that very dumb. So then Captain Marvel picks up the gauntlet from Peter. And he's like, how are you gonna be able to do it? And then we get a forced female-only sequence. Which I hate that sequence because it's so forced. It doesn't feel natural. So far, all the scenes have felt natural. But this one feels forced because you were with the Guardians. You were fighting with the Guardians, and you were off with Tony in order to help him. And like, why did you all just decide to abandon your post with your teams in that sense in order for this female group shot? That's the part that I personally have an issue with. So we get that scene that makes me groan because it's stupid. However, afterwards Captain Marvel flies on while the females defend her. However, right as she's about to go through the portal in order to be able to get rid of the stones, Thanos, he throws his weapon. I don't even know what you call that weapon, but he throws his weapon at the portal, destroying it. So now we have no way to get the stones away from here. So now it is a scramble, basically, for who gets the stones. And Thanos basically beats up everyone, even uses the Power Stone on Captain Marvel in order to knock her away. However, then Tony looks at Strange, and Strange puts up the finger, like, this is the one time, but you have to do what you are thinking of doing right now. If you don't do what you want, what you are thinking about doing, it is not going. But basically, like, yeah, this is the one. So Tony jumps Thanos, and Thanos gets him off, and he's like, I am inevitable. And you hear ding. It doesn't work because the stones are gone. Meanwhile, Tony has all of the stones, and he's just burning. And look, I will say, while it was badass, I feel like the pauses kind of took away from the scene in a way, because this is burning him, and he's just like, I am Iron Man, and then snaps his fingers like, dude, you are burning. But whatever, it was a cool moment. This one was actually a cool moment, but hey, I can still complain about it a little bit. But anyway, he snaps his fingers, and that's it. We've won. All the enemies start to disappear, so Thanos accepts it. He sits down, and he just vanishes away. And by the way, the reason that Gamora did not get snapped away, because Tony wanted Thanos and his army to be snapped away. However, Gamora had basically abandoned her post, so she's not with that army anymore. But yeah, anyway, afterwards, Tony dies in a sad scene. Peter's like, Mr. Stark, we did it, Mr. Stark. And then he just is like, hey, Pepper, and dies. By the way, I also like the fact that he went with Howard Potts earlier in the past when he introduced himself to his dad. I feel like he should have just said Morgan Potts though, but whatever, you know, the fact that he went Howard is just, I don't know, little nitpick for me, but then nothing to ruin the movie, just a little thing that I just had to say. Anyway, Tony dies, R.I.P. the boy, but he did it. He brought it everyone back. So then we have the funeral for Tony. We also get to see that the world is happier now. We get that ultimate victory, and Tony is gone. We get to see some close-ups on a bunch of characters as they're standing there. Also, to anyone who is like, who is that? That's the kid from Iron Man 3, if you remember correctly, but he's grown up now. Technically, because of the fact that it has been 11 years in continuity, but also, it's been about, like, I don't know, it's been a couple of years, so I don't actually know if it's the same actor. I think I actually saw online that it was, but I don't remember fully. But Tony is gone, and also, Hawkeye and Wanda, they talk for a little bit, and Clint is just like, I hope she knows that we won. And then Wanda's like, they both do, in a reference to Vision. Initially, I was thinking Quicksilver, but no, it was Vision. So there you go, that's the end of the movie. And then Thor also makes Valkyrie the queen of Asgard, or New Asgard, because he goes off with the Asgardians of the Galaxy, baby, which I would have liked to see in a movie, but Taika Waititi had to ruin everything. Look, it would have been cool if Thor and the Guardians teamed up in a Thor movie, and then at the end they split up so that Guardians could get their own movie, because the fact that James Gunn did not want to use them. So then we come to the other moment, and that is the fact. By the way, the other moment of hype was the fact that the portal's opening and everyone coming through. Anyway, but we need to bring back the stones. So Cap apparently has volunteered in order to bring back the stones, so he goes back in time in order to bring back the stones. However, he doesn't come back. And then Bucky sees someone sitting there and is like, hey, Sam, look over there. So Sam walks up. Turns out it's Joe Biden, baby. It's actually Steve Rogers, but to be honest, everyone calls him Biden anyway. And he gives Sam the shield. Wrong person in my opinion, but hey, whatever. That is more. Like, I have more of an issue with that in Falcon and the Winter Soldier than in this movie. In this movie, I was like, okay, let's see where they take it. And they don't take it in a good direction, so I hate it. But also, let's talk about this moment for a little bit, because this moment is stupid, okay? Because we know that when you come back, you have to come back to that moment, right? So he has to come back to the machine as an old man, but he did not. He's right there sitting on a bench. How does that work? And now here comes kind of like a small issue. That is the fact, is that Captain America from our timeline? Did he live through our timeline and just not help? Or did he live in an alternate universe and then came back to our universe? That is the question on everyone's mind. Some people say that he went to an alternate timeline, and I believe that one, because it makes more sense, because otherwise it's like, okay, so throughout the MCU, Steve Rogers didn't help at all. Cool. I think the alternate timeline version is what I like more. However, what I also imagine is the fact that he came back at an earlier point in time and just went to sit there after the battle was done. Maybe when everyone was mourning Stark. Maybe like built the time machine in order for Steve to leave, but first we have the funeral for Stark. So Biden came back from that alternate timeline while the funeral for Stark was happening, and he went to sit on a bench while Steve teleported away. You know, maybe that happened. That's how I see it anyway. However, I also hate this as well because of the fact that Steve went back in time. I would have loved to see how he would have reacted to Red Skull being there. I don't think he would have been mad at him. I think he would have been, so this is where you've been this entire time. That kind of reaction. But I would have loved to see that, but we didn't get to see that. And that's it. That's the end of the movie. That's how it ends, you know? We have the finale of the Infinity Saga. This is it. It's done. Now, I know technically Spider-Man Far From Home is the epilogue of the Infinity Saga. However, I have a little bit of an issue with that movie because it takes place like in the middle of 2024. We have like 6 projects that takes place in between Avengers Endgame and Spider-Man Far From Home. So I'm not gonna talk about Spider-Man Far From Home because we have a bunch of other projects to deal with because oversaturated. They did too much. Okay, even though I don't think I used the right word, but I don't care. They did too much. But like we have a lot of projects that take place before Spider-Man Far From Home. So I will count that as being part of the multiverse saga. But that's it. That is the movie. That is the epic that ends it all. And I don't know, this could be an hour-long spoiler talk. I don't care. My goodness, what a movie. What an experience. Like, this movie works on its own. I feel like together with Infinity War, obviously. But it adds so much when you watch everything. And in my opinion, it adds even more if you also watch the TV shows. Because if you watch the movies, you understand why they are fighting. But for me, when I watched the TV shows, I understood what they were fighting for. Because of the fact that we get a bunch of grounded storylines. And also, a lot of these heroes, they probably couldn't have made it to that final battle anyway. Also, I've seen a lot of people call the final battle in Endgame a wasteland because of the fact that that is what happens in like other movies. And they always reference Endgame. For example, Rise of the Beast from Transformers. That one had a wasteland final battle. This was not a wasteland. This was a destroyed battlefield. There's a difference, okay? But I love this movie. Does it have some problems? Yes. However, with the time traveling stuff, I feel like they covered their ground with the time traveling stuff. stuff, because it's just like what they did with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 7, the last thing we looked at in the MCU, where it's like ripples, not waves. You can change small things here and there, just like little things, you know, like taking the baseball glove, or, you know, Tony having an interaction with his dad, that kind of stuff. It's small stuff like that, or stealing some pin particles. You know, the little things like that won't affect anything. But if you, like, go back in time and kill Thanos, that is going to leave a big mark. So I like the way that they handled that. Also, another thing that I wanted to talk about was my breaks, actually. I took 2 breaks during this movie. They were not because I wanted to, they were because I had to. Because I actually paused it at each, like, hour mark in that sense. So I actually saw this movie in 3 acts, in a sense. Because the first time I had to pause it was because I had an appointment with someone, and the second time is, yeah, sometimes you do need to eat in order to be able to survive. But I do like how at each hour mark I had to pause the movie, because the fact I had to do something, it was just very convenient. But also, this movie is just fantastic, and I don't know if they're gonna outdo it, you know? I mean, we have Avengers Doomsday coming out in the year that this is going up, not recorded because it is still July of 2025, and also, technically for you guys, next year we have Avengers Secret Wars as well. I don't even know if by the time this goes up there's a trailer for Avengers Doomsday, but maybe there is. However, I don't think that it's really gonna be like as good as these movies, but that's also because most of the multiverse saga characters I don't care about. You know, it's like, oh no, She-Hulk died. I'm like, okay, I don't care. I don't care. Okay, I don't care. I'm not gonna shed a tear for her, okay? I don't care. So, like, a lot of characters I just don't care about. Or like that woman from Secret Invasion, whatever her name was. I hope she dies. Not the actress, though. Like, I don't have anything against the actors. It's just, I don't, like, the character is just terrible. Like, the only ones I feel like I actually care about are the legacy characters and the Thunderbolts. And that's about it, you know? But, like, overall, I love this movie and the whole Infinity Saga. It has ups and downs, obviously. And yes, I will include the TV show. So we have, obviously, the Scott Buck stuff, Iron Fist Season 1. We have Inhumans. But also, in the movie era, we also have, like, Iron Man 2 and Thor the Dark World. Captain Marvel, definitely. Worst thing in the Infinity Saga, I think. If I remember. I don't actually remember, but I think that might have actually been the worst thing in the Infinity Saga. Good thing I didn't count Hellstrom, because maybe that would have been worse, but I'm never gonna watch that. That is not canon, and I don't care. I don't care. I'm not making that thing canon, okay? But I hope that maybe we can see more TV connections with the upcoming stuff. I'm not expecting it. You know, maybe Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. characters, like maybe Quake will show up in Vision Quest or something like that. You know, that would be nice. I heard, like, a rumor about maybe there was gonna be an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. connection in Vision Quest. But who knows, you know? I saw that rumor once, but it is one of those, like, throw everything at a wall until it sticks. So basically lie until somehow you get something right, you know? So maybe that's not going to happen. Who knows? But I would like to see that, because they did do it for the Defenders saga. So I would love to see Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because it is the best thing the MCU has TV-wise. Definitely. But I'm gonna call it a day here, because I don't really have much else to say outside of the fact that this was an epic beast. And to be honest, I think there might be only one spoiler talk that might be longer than this one, movie-wise, specifically saying that one, because of the fact that I will, after I'm done with the MCU, tackle some of the DCEU, including Zack Snyder's Justice League, and that bad boy is about 4 hours long, so that spoiler talk might actually be longer than this one, but who knows. Anyway, let me know what you guys thought about Avengers Endgame in the comment section down below. With that being said, thank you all so very much for watching, and I hope you guys have enjoyed, and if you did, please like button, subscribe if you've done so already. Turn on notifications, don't forget to check out the Let's Play channel, link description, and at the end of the video. And now that we are done with the Infinity Saga, what is next? Well, it's multiversal stuff. However, when I say that, I don't mean the Multiverse Saga. Oh god, no. We are gonna be tackling the multiverse movies, aka the past Marvel movies that have been canonized thanks to multiversal stuff in the Multiverse Saga, like Spider-Man No Way Home and Deadpool and Wolverine. I think those are actually the only two. But those two. Thanks to those two, there's a lot of movies. We got, like, the old Blade movies, the old Spider-Man movies, and Amazing Spider-Man movies, the X-Men movies, all of that. And by the way, if there's other stuff that will be canonized thanks to either Doomsday or Secret Wars, well, not Secret Wars, but Doomsday, I will record stuff for those as well. Like maybe the Punisher movie or something like that. I don't know. Who's to say? But before we even get into that stuff, I think it's time to explain some more multiversal stuff. So what I will be taking a look at next time is Loki Season 1, actually. That is the next thing that we'll do, and then we'll head into the multiversal stuff, and then after that is done, we'll go into the multiverse saga. So like I said, next time is going to be Loki Season 1. At least that is next time in the MCU, obviously. I don't know what's coming out in between. Maybe there is something, maybe there is nothing. Maybe it's Born Again Season 2. Maybe it's Lanterns, who's to say? I don't know, but I'm gonna record Loki Season 1 tomorrow, so yeah, hopefully I'll see you guys for that one. Bye!